We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this Vexilla Logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, Vex Heads, and welcome to episode 23 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast I've ever done that I didn't have to mark as explicit. And a lot of that is due to our guest today. We had Erik Nystul, as I teased out last week, from the newly created Flag Institute of Utah on. So I figured with there being a larger listening and viewing Utah audience than normal, I would, cut out all the swears and all that stuff. So get ready for a clean episode, y'all. Anyway, just a couple other announcements. One, I wanted to give credit for the first trivia question to Kevin Heyman, who was a guest on, I think it was episode 9, the one with Boris Yeltsin in a beaver suit. He came up with that first one. I meant to give him credit in real time and just forgot. But anyway, thanks, Kevin, for that. I wanted to mention that we do love our Welsh listeners, despite one thing that we said that was all in good fun, and I hope you all take it that way. So stay tuned for whatever part that is. I wanted to plug another podcast on the show as well. I don't talk about it too much. I need to talk about it more, but I am part of a D&D podcast, and another separate podcast run by completely different people, although Kick-Assatron, the Dungeon Master, has been a guest on this show a couple times, so check him out. But yeah, Spooky Dice Bag is the name of that one. So if you're looking for a D&D podcast, I play a character named Umbra, who is like an emo changeling that's like very in their feelings a lot of the time. So it's a fun time anyway, if you're into that. Our Instagram winner this week, who got the flag of Barbados that I flew just yesterday, as of recording, that was Jackdaw Forever 02. Again, he has won before, and that is Jack JACKDAW, the number 4 EVER02, Jackdaw Forever 02. Check his page out. He's an Austrian guy. He's got a lot of really cool photography on his Instagram, so just find his @ on there. And then a brief update on the Utah flag, since that is mostly what we're talking about this episode. So it has, in the time between when Erik and I recorded, and I texted him to confirm this was correct, but it has passed the Senate. Well, it had already passed the Senate when we recorded, but it has now passed a House committee so that it can go in front of the full House for a vote on or before the 3rd, which you may recognize as tomorrow/today, depending on when I get this episode up. But yeah, this Friday in any case. So that's exciting. Once it's approved there, which it hopefully will be, Erik gives me assurance that it is. They're trying to give first priority to a few other bills, but it is in line, his words. And once it's approved there, it can be signed by the governor. There are going to be some ceremonial flag days where the old one is still flown, but, by and large, Utah will have a new flag. So that's very exciting. And that's where it stands now. I don't think I had much, if anything, more to announce on this one other than just my usual stuff. Go check out our Discord. That's where all the cool conversations are happening. It's like me and Tara and Curtis and like Kevin, a ton of our past guests. If you want to ask questions of the guests, that's where you would do it. So meet us in there. Tara asked a couple questions in there for this episode, which you'll hear later. Also, just wanted to mention really quickly that Erik and I talk a lot about Utah flag history, which I thought was interesting enough to leave mostly in the middle section. But if you are looking for more info about the current, like very current, as in won't last much longer Utah flag, and the proposed change, I would skip ahead to, I think, roughly around 40 minutes is where we start getting into the one that it is now and the one that it's going to change to and all that stuff. So just a heads up, if after the intro, if you're less interested in all the history, I decided to leave it in, but some people may want to skip ahead to the 40-minute mark. So just a courtesy tip. And yeah, only other thing I wanted to say is next week we've got comedian Mike Carosa on. He is from Montreal. He lives in Canada still. So we are going to talk about some Canadian flags next week. So tune in for that one too. But without any further ado than I've already done, let's go ahead and get into this episode. Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else, we have another amazing guest for you this week. You know him as the Secretary General of the newly announced Flag Institute of Utah. You know him as a Utah-raised flag lover. And you know him as a proponent and volunteer for the effort to add a new flag to the Beehive State. It's Erik Nystul!
You make me sound a lot more impressive than I actually am, but it's the honor of my life to be joining you.
Wow, and you've had quite a life, even in the Vex field alone, so I appreciate that. But yeah, how you doing, Erik?
Oh, well, we actually here in Utah just got kind of another snowpocalypse. I feel like it's our third one of the winter.
Right.
So a buddy of mine just shoveled 2 feet off of his house.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we're about ready for spring to show up. And with the coming of longer days and warmer weather, I feel like we should add a new flag to that as well.
Yeah. And from the news, I think you're in luck, but we will get to that. And actually, we will get to a lot more of getting to know Erik. But before we do that, wanted to just get into, for the listeners and viewers, a little bit of what we're going to go over today on the show. So the first thing, as is the new usual anyway, we are going to get to know Erik's underrated and overrated flags, get to know his favorite flag, or one of his favorite flags, I think in this case, and we're going to find out what flag he's currently flying. Then, after that, we are going to get into basically like kind of the broad history of the Utah flag, from where it started to where it is now, and honestly, even into the future, because some of the stuff we're talking about today has not happened yet. And then we're going to close out, kind of wind things down with a nice little quiz. I started doing them on last episode. I think this is going to be a regular feature at this point. So on one of Erik's favorite flags. So he knows that now if he didn't already.
It's the quiz I'm the most nervous about, because I feel like this is where I prove my chops as a flag nerd.
Oh, yeah. And this part is like before that part. So like, if people tune out before that part, then they won't know if you do poorly on the quiz.
Good.
I'm sure you won't.
I'll encourage them to be like, well, it was great talking to you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we can do like a fake little closeout after that. Like for those of you who don't want to hear the quiz.
Before I embarrass myself. No, I'm so excited.
No, I'm sure the quiz will not embarrass you. If anything, it'll probably embarrass me and the people of this country. But no, hopefully not that latter. Anyway, so yeah, let's get to know you a little bit better. So like I said up top, as far as your credits go, you are the Secretary General of the newly announced Flag Institute of Utah. So tell us a little bit about the newly announced part of that. I gather it's a recent thing.
This is brand new. Martin Garcia, he is the president of it, and he's invited me to be the Secretary General of it. As you and a bunch of flag nerds know, that it's a big time to be a flag lover in Utah. Salt Lake City just had a very successful new flag. And I know that you are a huge fan of St. George, Utah, and their new flag design.
Yes.
It's the that all blue with the gold rays on one side.
St. George's is really cool, yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit more later, but and Utah adding another flag to its history, we are definitely on the ground floor of an exciting movement. There's a lot of other cities that are also in the process right now of redesigning flags or just adding that they've never had them.
Right.
It's definitely the Roman Mars effect. You can kind of see before that TED Talk dropped versus after. It's fun to be a flag lover in Utah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, after that talk drops, like, it's fun to be a flag lover in the United States because you now have hope that you didn't have before.
Yeah,
I think because there's
and
more
momentum.
eyes on it.
Yes,
And momentum. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's wild to see the kind of like groundswell and the buildup. And speaking of ground, you are getting in on the ground level, I guess, of this Utah Flag Institute, which so cool. I will admit I am very jealous. I will say Tennessee doesn't need a new flag. Our flag is perfect as it is. But if it did, I don't know, man. I'd be lining up.
Yeah, it's a funny situation. I worked in the state capitol last year as just a staffer, and I met Dan McKay. He's the state senator fronting this bill to add a new state flag. And I said to him, listen, there's a lot of great bills happening. We're going to lower taxes. We're going to make housing more affordable, better. We're going to save the Great Salt Lake, which unfortunately, because of climate change, is kind of dwindling. And we're going to do all these great things. But the bill to establish a new state flag that's literally something I've looked forward to since I was, I think, 4th grade, maybe earlier than that, when we were learning Utah history.
Right,
and I found out that the state seal and the state flag were basically the same thing. I still remember being crushed by that knowledge. I'm like, oh, I mean, our seal's fine. It makes a good seal, but we kind of settled for that. So yeah, this is the culmination of a few decades of want and desire.
It's interesting too, as a Tennessean, hearing like that story about you in 4th grade, like finding out, oh, it's this. All right. Because I feel like in Tennessee, you always kind of, even before 4th grade, I knew what the flag was or what it had on it because of a lot of what I talk about on the show, which is just good, solid flag design. And solid flag design includes like being able to be remixed, which growing up in Knoxville, Tennessee, you're going to see a lot of that tri-star that's in the middle of the Tennessee flag, but in orange and white. You see it all over the place because go Vols, obviously.
The first time I ever saw it was on the Titans uniforms.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like when you have a good logo, you can do things like that with it, which, yeah, Utah is waking up to. But before we get into all that, we did want to get to know you a little bit better and hear, from what I understand, I'm going to be absolutely floored by your overrated. So let's start with your underrated flag.
I love when we use different colors. We have a lot of red, white, and blue for every country, not just the U.S. flag or its state flags. And I mean, I'm nowhere to talk. The new Utah flag is a symphony of red, white, and blue. But the flag of the Bahamas is just so different with the light cyan blue, with the warm yellow, with a huge black triangle coming off the hoist side. It's so different than anything. And it's just colors that I wouldn't think would go together well. But then the more I look at it, I'm like, it's unique. Nobody will ever question who that is. Like, it stands out from a billion miles away. And it's simple, but it feels Bahamian. It feels like Afro-Caribbean. I love the mix of colors and shape. Oh, it doesn't get the love it should.
Yeah, I've got it up on it's one of the bunting that I think the viewers can barely see a little bit up here, but it's right over there. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that one. It doesn't get the love or recognition, I guess, is maybe even a better way to put it, that it deserves. And it is a very cool flag, a very cool color combination that, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, trying to think of other flags with that color combination.
Yeah,
how is that like? There's that unique shade of blue is kind of what's stopping me from saying, oh, it's like Barbados or whatever.
Yeah, you have other light, like Argentina has a really light blue.
A lot of Central and South American ones, especially the new Honduras.
It's such a unique blue. It's not quite sky blue. It's not quite ocean blue. They've taken something and really made it their own, and I appreciate that.
Right on. I like that. So what is your overrated flag?
I debated of whether to preface this, but I decided just to rip the Band-Aid off. The flag of Japan is overrated.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Tennessee, but go on.
No, oh my God. No, I don't want to get kicked off.
I was like, he sat through that entire segment of me. Yeah, go on.
No, I like Tennessee's, and the reason why Japan, iconic, again, nobody's going to misremember it, but there's simple, and then there's like only 2 elements and 2 colors, nothing else. If I had my way, it would be more akin to South Korea.
Yeah, I could see that.
With the I'm really gonna test my pronunciation now, but the Taejuk in the center and the trigrams around the side.
I'm not trying it, but yeah, I got that one right up here.
Yeah, it's akin to Japan, but just with a little something else.
Yeah,
and as we kind of talk about the new Utah flag, a lot of people say it's funny. I hear, it's way too simple, and I'm like, is it? And then some other people say, it's way too complicated. I'm like, that's warranted too. But compared to Japan, just the red circle on the white field, I understand it, but it's overrated. It's too simple.
No, I hear you. I honestly don't disagree with that. I would ask, how do you feel? So since just to combine your over and your under, how do you feel about the flag of Palau?
Hold on, you're gonna have to edit this all in later, but similar ways. And Palau is interesting just because, if I'm not mistaken, it's a tad bit like off center.
It is. It's offset toward the hoist. Yeah.
But even that, I feel like white is kind of a non-color. But so Palau being like a yellow circle on almost a Bahamian blue. Hey, I was
going to say that's kind of why I was saying combining your over and your under. If we were to literally combine your over and your under, I think you would have the flag of Palau with maybe like some kind of black element on it.
The show notes of this are going to be it's an appreciation of Bahamian blue.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, so Japan it's good, but just white is kind of, I feel like it doesn't count as a flag color almost.
Yeah, I mean, in heraldry terms, it literally doesn't. It's a non. Yeah, you can use more if you use white. So, all right, so that's your over and your under. Let's see, the flag you have flying up outside your house right now. I get the sense that we are going to go into that one a lot in the middle, but go ahead and mention what that one is.
Okay, so it is the flag, the proposed new flag for the state of Utah.
Yeah.
And it's important that I put proposed because as of February 23rd, it is not officially accepted by the full legislature yet. It has passed the Senate, but now it's in the Utah House of Representatives.
Right. So we will get into all that in just a minute. But before we get to that, just the last little bit before we do is, what is your favorite flag? One of your favorite flags, I think, in your case, that we're going to get to hear a quiz on later.
That's like Sophie's Choice, asking to choose your favorite child.
Yeah, I know.
I first got into flags because of like my ancestry, nationalities, and part of that is a proud bit of wealth. And when I was looking into my family history, when I was little, and I was like, "There's a flag with a freaking dragon on it." And it's not the simplest flag. It kind of violates some rules there, but it is appropriate because today is actually Welsh Flag Day, February 23rd.
Yes. Behind the scenes look at when we record.
Oh.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, so the flag of Wales, I've seen it in person off a castle in Wales, and that just cemented my love for it. I'm like, that is perfect. It's just so Welsh. And so maybe if I went to Japan and saw their flag flying in the wild, kind of in its natural environment, I'd feel different. But the flag of Wales is a beaut.
No disagreement here. I mean, to your point, we talk a lot on the show about like a flag looks good on a screen, good on a computer screen, phone screen, whatever. But how does it look flying? And exactly to your point, like, yeah, seeing the Welsh flag fly off of like a Welsh castle.
Mhm.
I've not had the pleasure of doing that just yet, but it sounds amazing. Similarly, like you said, maybe seeing the Japanese one fly over something important, something maybe even not important, like, but seeing it in the wild, as we call it, as a lot of us in the Vex community call it, it does kind of change your perception on things. Like there was a few flags even of Michael's, of like Flags for Good, that I was like, I think I really like this, but I need to see it fly. And then
Yes.
upon seeing it fly, is the Washington State one, the redesign that he has. Upon seeing it fly, I was like, oh no, I love this. I liked it on a computer screen. I love it in real life. So imagine Wales is I mean, it sounds like you love it either way, which again, no argument here, but
that was a whole step of the Utah flag semifinalist redesigns, is they printed them out just to kind of see what they look like in real life, because it's completely different that way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the Utah flag redesigns. And I'm going to start somewhere I think is entirely logical, the beginning. Oh. This is the flag of the Utah Territory. And I don't even have the years on this one, but it was pre-1903. So this had to have been 19th century and used maybe intermittently.
Yeah, it was well before 1900 when that was a thing. And that was, you can kind of see the beginnings of our current state flag in there with the beehive, which is actually that right there is called a skep, that hive design. And it's a man-made thing made out of rope or straw. And it's kind of an artificial house for bees to... So some people who have seen it online, they're like, what's that golden igloo? And I'm like, hey, if you didn't know any better, that's a good way to describe it. But it's a beehive. One of the reasons, there's some scriptural, religious reasons why we're called the Beehive State, but it kind of goes to speak to our state motto, which is industry. Everyone kind of working together to establish good economy, industriousness, all hail capitalism kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. So I was wondering, and like, obviously this will come up like later / throughout the episode. Well, it would have come up later if I wasn't bringing it up now. But as far as the beehive goes, like, what are your, and tell me if you want me to cut this or whatever, but like, what are your views on the like religious aspect on a flag, where it seems like a separation of church and state type thing could arise?
So I'm obviously biased being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints myself.
Yeah.
But I think the beehive symbol has been around a while, and we are known as the Beehive State, where there are some that are not in the church that think of it as a huge like sticking point, like a huge current church advertisement. But then there's also some that are like, no, it's just been the Beehive State for over 100 years. That's just kind of our nickname. And you can be a member of the Beehive State without being a member of the predominant faith. And so for some, it's a big sticking point. Some do think it's like a religious symbol, and they're kind of, I don't agree with that they want it to be super religious. They want to add more of that to our flag. And so we kind of get it on both sides. But as just kind of a modern kind of a symbol of the Beehive State, and kind of our focus on community and kind of focus on that, I hope we can kind of get to more of a secular interpretation. I know it was originally a very religious symbol, but hopefully it will get more and more accepted as, we're just the Beehive State, and we want to be welcome of people that in and out of that faith.
Right. Yeah. I mean, symbols can definitely change in meaning over time. I mean, you got for better or for worse, and I'm not even going to like bring up examples in either of those regards, but yeah, it's all about what the person looking at it sees as it's signifying, like what's the signified to them. And yeah, I mean, thanks for answering that. Like, that was a really good answer. I think that's absolutely kind of the way that I look at it. Is I'm a religious for what it's worth, but I don't know. there is a certain point where it just kind of has become like the symbol for the state, whatever its origins are. And while it's not my favorite, it wasn't even necessarily my favorite redesign that won. I don't hate it. I don't have like that as a huge sticking point for me. So
yeah, and it's funny. Me and my friends, kind of in our little group of flag nerds, have laughed that there are people on the left who say it is too much a celebration of the Mormon faith. And then there's people on the right that are saying the new flag is deleting all evidences of the Mormon faith. And it kind of reminded us of a scene in Parks and Rec where Leslie Knope says, so it's too religious and not religious enough. And I think we've kind of struck at least personally for me, I feel what's funny about a flag when it's designed by committee is it's never anybody's first choice.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's important to remember that.
The way we arrived at it with thousands of design submissions and like 44,000 just public responses to surveys and inputs, I think we arrived at something that for the most part, people are like, okay, we can get behind that.
I can definitely get behind it and definitely agree that it's a much needed step up from what you used to have. And speaking of what you used to have, let's briefly anyway, kind of go through the timeline. This one that I've just sent you and which the viewers can see now, we'll describe it for the listeners, is let's see, what year was this? This was from 1904 to 1911. So there was one from 1903 to 1904, but I've kind of skipped over it. It's basically just a less colored in version of this one. And so I figured we could skip right to this one since it lasted a few more years.
So a broad strokes history of it is Utah really didn't have an official flag for decades and decades. Then all of a sudden, a little thing called the World's Fair comes along, and they're going to do a parade of states where they show everybody marching with their flag. And they get to Utah and they're like, you don't have a flag. And so we get in touch with the Daughters of the American Revolution, say, hey, can you hook us up with something? And so the image they're looking at, just imagine kind of and it was originally, the image you're seeing is kind of a white and blue kind of monochrome version of our current flag.
Yeah.
But actually the thread originally was silver. So it was kind of like bougie that way.
Oh, okay.
And they actually had to add the word Utah at the bottom of it because still nobody could figure out which state that kind of seal of an eagle, the beehive, the two American flags.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even clock that was also different from the 1903 one to the 1904 one, is they added the word Utah.
As it was hanging, there was really nothing that symbolized that it was Utah specific unless you had a microscope and could zoom in on the beehive on there. And a lot of people at that time didn't even know what the beehive meant. So
right, sure, yeah. That's a really similar story to New Mexico, who also got their flag. I think it was like the 18. It may have been an earlier. Well, no, maybe I'm just thinking of the year they were founded. But it was one of those World's Fairs, probably around the same time as this. Might have been 1904. And they had just printed out like New Mexico, the Sunshine State, which you may notice as Florida's motto, and not theirs, Land of Enchantment. I think. Anyway.
And South Dakota's like, no, we have more sunshine than anybody. Right.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of nonsense. But so basically this kind of came around in the same like time and like I don't know, like zeitgeist or whatever of that New Mexico flag that I'm thinking of. And that makes sense. A lot of people used to go to the DAR, like the Daughters of the American Revolution, and be like, we need a flag. I mean, like Colorado did it. Like one of their early ones is from the DAR. I forget that I've covered other states on here that did get the DAR to design their flags, most of which have been redesigned. And now we can say the same about Utah almost. I mean, well, we can say the same about Utah in that it evolved into a different thing and then now is about to change. But anyway, so we could move on to the next one. It's a little bit boring. And I would honestly like to hear more about what you kind of teased earlier about Deseret and getting that like recognition, getting all of that kind of going.
Yeah. So if I imagine whatever next one you'll show will be what will be very similar to what
Yes.
was just on the screen. You'll notice that at the top we have a bald eagle kind of perched atop the Utah shield, as it were, flanked by American flags. I would argue that, fortunately and unfortunately, we have the most patriotic state flag that has like 3 huge symbols of federalism. Because there was quite a rift between the inhabitants of Utah and the federal government before statehood was achieved.
Mhm.
And so for the longest time, it was just appeasing them like, hey, polygamy and all that, I know you're not a big fan. We're going to do what we can to make you happy, gain statehood. And those are kind of remnants of this appease to be part of the United States. And when we talk about changing the Utah flag, there's a lot that kind of critique that they're like, hey, you want to get rid of the American flag and the bald eagle on our flag? And I'm like, that was kind of back in a time when Utah was striving to just be a part of the United States. But now we kind of say, economically, we're doing great. We're a settled state now, and we kind of want to lead out. We don't just want to be a follower and kind of try to seek admission anymore.
Yeah, when I was doing my research for this episode, I had learned about Deseret and some of the struggles of Utah to get to a state. Obviously, here in Tennessee, we don't learn Utah state history; we learn Tennessee state history. But there was a lot more than I thought. Like I thought I knew most of the story, but no, y'all were trying for years and years and years, and giving a little concession here, a little concession there. I will say, y'all were trying to grab a lot of territory. Like the state of Deseret would have been bigger than, it'd been almost the size of Alaska, right?
Utah history is a funny thing. If you kind of go at it, you kind of look beyond the unfortunate bits and.
Oh, sure. I mean, Tennessee history is like, trust me, there are tons of unfortunate bits.
All history has unfortunate bits.
Most of it.
But, yeah, Utah's got some quirky things. I'm glad it's worked out the way it has. And I tell people, I'm like, okay, before we were Utah, it was Mexico. Before it was Mexico, it was indigenous land. So we can't say that, like, the pioneers were God's gift to this area.
Right. Yeah, I think that's more than fair. But, yeah, no, I definitely learned a lot about Utah history and I guess, like, Deseret history as a result. And Utah flag history. The next interesting one, I would say, is this one, which is from 1913. And this one is finally when they stopped using just the silver thread and finally got a few colors on it.
The history behind this is that was actually not a approved move to colorize this. They sent it off to a new manufacturer and said, all right, we need you to print this off for us. And the manufacturer sent it back colorized. That was never asked for by the governor or the Utah legislature. They just sent it back red, white, and blue on the American flags by the Utah shield and a colored in version. And we just kind of rolled with it. We're like, it's going to be more effort to send it back and wait for...
So just like me, when I get anything in the mail that's not exactly like I ordered, I'm like, it's so much effort to send it back. Let's just make this work.
If we feel that way now in the era of Amazon Prime, imagine it would have been like, it probably would have been 10 years before they could have fixed that.
Oh yeah,
let alone 10 days.
We're a little past the Pony Express, but not a whole lot in this era.
No. But yeah, so that's kind of, and the two. Now we get into the kind of the 2 years that we have featured on our flag. In the shield, you'll see 1847, and that is to mark when the Mormon pioneers first arrived in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
And then under that, outside of the shield, is 1896 to celebrate when Utah finally got its statehood. 2 dates that are very important to modern Utah.
Yeah, so is that 49 years, I guess, after settling in the territory, they got their statehood.
Yeah, and it was a half century of turmoil and concession and struggle Yes. So they were very happy to finally, if you look at photos from 1896, it was a freaking America celebration.
I bet, yeah.
Giant American flags draped all throughout Salt Lake City and inviting the president over. And yeah, it was a big deal for us. So yeah, there were a lot of concessions, but I think they're good ones. It set us up for success, and Utah is now really doing well now. So can't argue with results.
Yeah, I mean, hey, to industry.
With your non-alcoholic beverage.
I was going to say, yeah, for the viewers, I'm drinking a Sam Adams Just the Haze non-alcoholic beer for, the Utah episode. 'Cause I imagine most of your beers are like 0.2% over there anyway.
And I'll toast with the national drink of Utah, which is Diet Coke.
Yeah, here. All right, so that aside, all right, so we've got an accidentally colorized flag, and that lasted, what did I say, from 1913 to 1922, so just under 10 years, but, again, it would take 10 years to send it back and get a different one, like you said, so 1922, we get this one that I've just sent you,
yep,
and that is the one that we know and have a relationship with till 2011. And in 2011, it changes, which we will get to in a second. But yeah, briefly kind of, I don't know. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference between the 1913 to 22 and the 22 to 2011 one, except for one notable difference, which I'm sure you're aware of, that kind of got messed up.
Yeah, that's the most obvious one, was the shield is not colored in. But also for some reason, I think the manufacturer just decided to do this. They took the year 1847, they took that out of the shield as well. I think they were just like, it looks better outside of it. There's a lot of changes and things that happened without real serious approval. So
right. No, and that was the
tumultuous history.
That was the main thing from my reading. It was more the fact that the years were both below the shield, and it was like codified that they were not supposed to be so, than it was that the shield wasn't colored in, which I don't know exactly when that was voted on or not voted on or whatever. Like you said, The other guy just like brought a colored one and said, deal with it. So
they're like, no, color. It's an age of technology. We did this for you.
Right.
And then we get that flag, which has the 2 years outside and the kind of the blue background of the shield that just kind of bleeds into the blue field of the flag.
Yeah.
And we're stuck with that one for 80 years?
Yeah, more or less.
Which, and then all of a sudden, until in 2011, some historians that I've met, cool guys, they're kind of the flag nerds of the boomer generation.
Okay, yeah.
They look into the history, but in the history books and to law, and they're like, wait a minute, our flag doesn't follow what we decree our flag should be.
Would that be John Hartvigsen?
Hartvigsen, and there's a couple others in there too. John's a great guy. He was in the committee meetings for the redesign. I was happy he was there.
Right, yeah. So at the time in 2011, he was the only NAVA member in the state of Utah.
Yeah,
that's why they had him be the one that changed it when they changed it.
Yeah, and there's a couple others in that mix too, and they come together and realize, listen, we've got this all wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, it wasn't atrocious. It's a minor change, but it's just funny that we kind of were flying it incorrectly for 8 decades.
Yeah, it's a decent change.
And it's a damning thing too, that we realize that for 80 years we're like, oh, the flag as we've decreed it isn't even right.
Well, it never looks good to any country, state, city, municipality, whatever, to look up and be like, oh, hey, we've been misfollowing one of our own laws for 80 years. That's never a good thing.
Yeah, and that's just, it's another thing to us. We're we really don't pay attention much to our flag in Utah as it stands right now.
Right, which is part of the problem.
Yes.
Which is why you and others have stepped in, which we'll get to in just a second.
But yeah, so in 2011, they made the change. They legislated and made it officially official how the current flag should look.
Yes, which the viewers will see now, and listeners.
Now.
It's basically It's basically that the same thing that we've been talking about. It's the eagle on the crest, or on the shield crest. There's the shield. Thank you. There's 6 arrows. There's the American flags draped. There's the years. Blah blah blah. The shield is now colored in white, so it does stand out a little bit better with contrast. And the 1847 is on the shield, as it was always apparently meant to be, under the word Utah. And other than that, not a huge change. So
and this gets us to where we are today. It's our state seal. I would argue. I really like our state seal. It's pleasantly symmetrical. It's pleasantly patriotic. It has the most important dates to us. It has Utah. It has our state motto on it. It as a seal. I really like it.
Oh,
there's
it's
a lot of
what?
Oh, I cut you off, but compared to other state seals, we are really doing well.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it's miles ahead of Tennessee's state seal, which is just like some like wheat out in a field, and then it says like agriculture and commerce.
I need to.
Which actually, I was going to say now that I know yours has industry on it. If we combine agriculture, commerce, and industry, then baby, you got a stew going.
Yeah. Oh, we'll unite forces and be the most productive state duo in history.
Tennessee. No, there's not enough Utah in that. Tennessee-taw?
Tenetaw? There might be a few in Tennessee who might not be too keen to join up with the Utah and the dominant faith here.
I was going to say, and vice versa, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. We don't even like Georgia taking an ounce of our water. So yeah. And they're culturally pretty similar to us. Yeah, no. Anyway. So, okay. So we've got that. We've got all that down, the flag that, barely changes for kind of over a century there. And then we get to 2021, which I'm sure you probably assumed I was going to bring this one up. And we have the commemorative flag of Utah. Yes. Which is adopted by the legislation as a commemorative flag. Which
for the 125th anniversary of the state of Utah, yes.
Right. A milestone for any state, 125, I guess.
Sure.
They couldn't wait till 150. They were like, no, do it now. 100 had already passed. But this one is very interesting to me because when you go to, I forget what even wiki page it is. I think it's just like list of U.S. state flags or something like that. But if you go to that Wikipedia page, obviously it's got all the list, the list like in alphabetical order of the state flags. It's got the territories. It's got all that. It has a category for ceremonial flags. And the only one in that category is Utah's ceremonial flag. It's the only state that has done such a thing. And
we're kind of leading out again, kind of the route we're going with adding a new flag, but also keeping the current flag as kind of an homage to history. But that commemorative flag, just to describe it to your listeners, imagine kind of we're getting into all sorts of terminology here, but like the St. Andrew's Cross of Scotland.
My listeners know a lot of this.
No, I'm testing my knowledge of how I describe this. I guarantee they know more than I do.
And I do.
4 quadrants in kind of the Scottish X. The top quadrant being navy blue, the 2 side quadrants being white, and the bottom quadrant being red, so red, white, and blue. But atop all of that is a kind of the gold circle that we have on our current flag. And within that, just a beehive and just a 5-pointed star directly beneath that. So compared to the current state flag, which is our entire seal and all the bees, the arrows, the flowers, the dates, the titles, it was a very trimmed down version.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that trying to figure out how to ask this and not burp at the same time from that non-alcoholic beer. And I know it's like kind of a weird question maybe, but how much do you think this flag does bear on the new flag that's been voted on?
A lot. And I give full credit to, I think Tanner Martin, I believe is his name. It was just one man who created this. And it was to celebrate Utah while at the same time kind of showing the state like, hey, we can do this kind of trimmed down like version that's new, that's brandable, that's kind of, and it kind of opened up a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
And people looked at it, the device, a lot of people really liked just kind of the circle, hive, and star just as one kind of purely Utah thing. But around the same time, they sent out surveys to kind of feel people out on how they feel about the current state flag, about getting a new one. And they sent out an image of the current state flag and said, literally just click on the most like meaningful part of the flag. Like what part of it represents Utah the best? And overwhelmingly, it's the beehive. That's the most notable, unique part of it.
Or
So
just the easiest part to click on, because if a lot of people are on their phone and they're like, oh, shoot, I meant to click on. Well, all right, I guess I clicked the beehive now.
Yeah, I mean, the rest was kind of went around to the dates, the American flags, which I kind of digress.
I joke as well, but yeah, I mean, I can see that being, I mean, it is literally and figuratively the central element of the flag, so it makes sense.
Yeah, so that commemorative flag, it was kind of to open up eyes and ideas and be like, hey, this is very much Utah still. No, people are going to look at that and they're not going to say, what is that? Georgia? Is that North Carolina? No, that's not going to happen with this.
Right.
I think there was a lot of worry that if we were to change things up, people would be like, but then we lose our identity. And that one-off commemorative flag for the 125th anniversary was a definite eye-opener. And to, like you said, you can see a lot of that in the now proposed 23 design.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a ton of it. It's almost, if you squint, like it's barely changed. But I do love let's move into the 2023. Do we call it the 2022 or 23 design? I don't know. I guess it was fourth.
Yeah. So the task force that the legislature put together made the selection in 2022, but it's going to be voted on in 23. So I think history will say it came about in 23.
Okay. So are you on that task force? Is that part of your purview, or?
I wish.
Okay.
I've always been a proponent when people say, oh, constituents came to us and said, hey, let's explore a flag. I'm one of those constituents. I did attend a lot of the meetings, but no, I'm not an official member of that task force or those committees.
Right on. Okay. So tell us about like what you did do, what part you did play in pushing through this new flag, or pushing through just the kind of, the vote to get a new flag in the first place, regardless of what that new flag was.
I really appreciate the way Utah went about it. The idea was just, hey, could Utah get a new flag? It's very different than Mississippi, which changed their flag for a very different reason.
Yes.
Ours was just kind of like, a state seal on a field of blue is just not that unique. Let's just kind of explore the process, see where it gets us. And yeah, they did surveys. A lot of people really still like the current flag. A lot of people kind of grew up with it. And so they kind of went in the direction instead of just throwing it away into the trash, let's kind of keep it the best. Okay, I'm hopping around here, but the best way I've seen the current flag is indoors at the Capitol on a spreader bar, and you can see every detail of the state seal. But where it suffers is on top of the state Capitol, which is on a hill, and then it's on a pole on top of the Capitol, and you're hundreds of feet away from it. It's extremely hard. It's impossible to read anything that's on there. And from afar, it looks like 24 other states' flags.
Yes, exactly. Having talked to Tara about this as far as Pennsylvania goes and everything, she's got the same gripes. And anybody who lives in one of those states, Kentucky, New York State, name them.
Yeah, and the worst is when there's no wind, and then you've just got a hanging blue banner. You can't even see the seal.
Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, and that's kind of where this came from, is just we can do something else. We're not going to change our seal. We're going to maintain that history. That's not going anywhere. We just want to add something else because Utah's flag is very underutilized. I see just kind of in my job and in my comings and goings, a lot of people wearing Colorado flag merch.
Oh, sure. It's one of the best.
California. I even see, for some reason, I see a lot of South Carolina branded. I mean, they have a really popular flag.
Again,
so
yeah, we did a whole
stands
episode
to
on
reason.
brandable flags, and that was up there. I've got a koozie, or like 6 koozies with the South Carolina flag on them.
Yeah, and who amongst us doesn't have a friend with a Texas flag design from that one time they visited? And
Oh, sure, yeah.
Now it's
somewhere.
now it's permeating all of culture.
Yep.
Yeah, Utah we kind of settled for having our seal pull double duty. So it's an exciting time for us to add something else to it.
Absolutely. So if you would actually, I've got a couple.
You had kind of talked about the process, and then I got off on something.
Yeah,
else.
I wanted to know about the process. I've got actually a couple questions here from the Discord group, and I also, for the listeners, wanted to know, so what does the new, and this can be wrapped up in the process talk, what does the new Utah flag look like visually, if you could explain it to someone?
Visually, I would say it's a modified tri-bar flag, kind of akin to Netherlands, but let me break it down. The top line is a field of blue, to kind of symbolize both our dark skies, and also kind of a nod to our current flag, field of blue. Then the center bar features a jagged mountain motif with 5 peaks, and that's special. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then the bottom line is red with kind of a little notch cut out of the bottom. It kind of nestles the center hexagon of the flag, but it also resembles a canyon, which southern Utah and its red rock, that's what it features a lot of. So geometrically, it kind of formed a nice little depression to kind of fit that beehive hexagon, and to kind of remind us of like Zion Canyon or Bryce Canyon and all those famous places in the state of Utah.
Okay. I don't even think I picked up on the canyon part. I picked up on most of the rest, but
I was in the design committee. It at first wasn't cut out like that. At first, they just added kind of a white border around the beehive hexagon.
A little fimbriation, but not too much.
Yeah, and when they did that, we realized, hey, it kind of makes like a natural plateau / canyon shape.
One of those happy accidents, yeah.
Yeah, very happy. We did want red to symbolize southern Utah, because that's a huge part of our state.
Sure.
And a huge claim to fame for us. And then when it created that natural depression to kind of show that plateau mode kind of effect, everyone loved it.
Yeah. That's how I come across some of my best ideas, whether it's with the show or with anything, is just messing up, basically.
Yeah.
Not even messing up, but just messing around, I guess is a better way to put it.
To finish describing to your listeners. So that's the kind of backfield. And then in the middle, instead of the normal golden circle, which is on the current flag, it's been changed to a gold hexagon or honeycomb pattern.
One could say.
Yeah. With the beehive and 5-pointed star within, as was kind of featured in the commemorative flag. But we've kind of opted for, instead of the circle, the hexagon is much more bee-related imagery. But it's also, it's a lot of states use circles on their flags.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, we are going to lay claim to that hexagon shape. And what we loved about it is not only because the beehive, that kind of igloo shape, it's called a skep. That's all man-made. But the hexagon, the honeycomb pattern, bees make that themselves. And it's also the strongest and most efficient shape geometrically.
Right.
So it was kind of a way to bring the inside of the beehive out and kind of show the strength and kind of play into the industrious bee nature of it.
Yeah. No, I do like that a lot. I like how the angles match up with the mountains. I didn't notice the canyon, but now I can't stop seeing it. We've got one little thing that we didn't describe yet, just under I'm going to keep calling it a beehive because I forget the word that you said.
But it's a beehive. You're good.
Just under that, there's another element, that has been changed even since 2022 and even since like January, I think, of this year of 23. Yes. And that would be the star. So could you go into a little bit of the one that was originally passed and why it's been changed to this one?
Yeah. And so is it, as they're looking, it's still on the screen. Actually, in my office here, I have the old. That's funny that something that came out in November is
right.
Now
it's outdated.
Already, yeah. That it originally was an 8-pointed star.
Right.
A few reasons why that changed. When we were doing surveys and kind of public input, a lot of people wanted a nod to Indigenous peoples on the flag. Mm-hmm. And so we came up with a lot of different ways to accomplish that. One had 8 individual stars on it, but that kind of got to be cluttered. So then they opted for an 8-pointed star underneath the beehive instead. 8 points symbolizing the 8 federally recognized tribes we have here in Utah.
Right.
And that was a way to go about it. However, a couple problems arose. One is at a distance, an 8-pointed star just kind of looked like a fuzzy dot or asterisk.
Yeah.
And so from a design-wise, it kind of suffered. And then another problem with the number 8 is that Utah currently has 8 federally recognized tribes, but there's at least 6 more that are trying to be federally recognized. Mm-hmm. They're still tribes, they're still groups, but unfortunately, they don't enjoy federal recognition right now. Mm-hmm. So the kind of thought was then to shift away from the star idea that we were trying to force in there. We switched it to a 5-pointed star, which is kind of traditional, easier to see, easier to make it out. And even when kids would try to draw it, they would just draw a 5-pointed star. That's just kind of what their mind went to.
Sure, yeah.
And then, so with this new version, in the language of the bill, Senator McKay, who's running it, met with a constituent, and we had the idea, we're like, what if those 5 peaks that are those 5 mountain peaks featured on the flag, what if those instead stood for the 5 major tribal groups of Utah, namely the Ute, the Navajo, the Paiute, the Goshute, and the Shoshone, and all their underlying specific tribes, whether or not they have federal recognition. Mm-hmm. So he met with a Native American constituent who said, it's actually, we consider the land to be sacred. So they kind of liked the idea. And it's also it makes it a much bigger part of the flag for us to say 5 peaks to represent the indigenous people of Utah. And so that was kind of the kind of compromise, the adjustment we went to. A lot of us like it better because, the 5-pointed star is much easier to see at a distance. It looks a bit cleaner. It's a bit simpler. And the way it's written into the legislation now is that the beehive represents 1847, when those pioneers came. The star now represents 1896.
Okay, so the star represents when your star got added to the U.S. flag.
Correct. So that's
45th, is that?
Yes.
Yeah,
yep.
Okay.
So that's our statehood star. And then the 5 peaks to represent the 5 major tribal groups of Utah.
Right on. And that's the new Utah flag. So we are, as Erik mentioned earlier, we are recording this on the 23rd, and this episode will come out to y'all on March 2nd. March 3rd, I believe, is the last day that, I don't remember if it's the Senate or the House, but whichever.
Yeah, so the entire Utah legislature needs to wrap up shop by the time this episode airs.
Basically by the time this airs, yeah. So things may change. I can't imagine they change too much. Hopefully they just go in and they vote on it and they say yes, and it goes to the governor's desk and they sign it and say, yes, cool, new flag. But, just a little caveat, since we are recording this a week from whenever that happens. So.
Yes. But no, it's exciting times.
Now. Yes, it's very exciting times. Like
as it stands now, it has passed through the Utah Senate and is now on the House side. And so we're just kind of waiting for bureaucracy to happen.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting times. Like anytime a state gets a new flag, or I mean, honestly, even like a city gets a new flag. Like we don't have time to go into Salt Lakes, but I think it's gorgeous with the lily and the Sego lily and everything.
Correct.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I wish we had time to go into it. Maybe I'll have you on again at some point. But I did have just a couple questions from listeners well, actually, these are both from a past guest, from Tara, who I've been talking about, because she, like I said, is trying to get Pennsylvania's flag changed to this Keystone one here that the viewers can see in the background. And I'll put up on the screen as well. But she asked, what challenges have you faced in advocating for a new flag? So like, what kind of like hurdles and things like that?
The biggest hurdle has been that we kind of come from a flag nerd perspective, and we love flag design. We love flags, and we just want one that will be used more often. A lot of what we've done has been interpreted as like an attack on history or against the state itself. So that's the big challenge, has been for us to just kind of educate and just say, hey, listen, this is not coming from a place of hatred, communism, Marxism, destruction of society.
All things that you will get accused of, unfortunately.
Yeah, there are just some states, like I served my mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the state of South Carolina, and their flag is everywhere all the time. And I was shocked, coming from Utah, that our flag isn't just isn't used that much.
Yeah.
And so our argument is like, let's add something else. We're not trashing the old flag. We don't hate our seal, but let's give ourselves some new imagery to kind of celebrate, rally behind, kind of an exciting thing for the future.
Yeah, I mean, these are all things that Tara says, like, to a T, pretty much. Like, because Pennsylvania state seal, it's like, yeah, it's fine, but it doesn't belong on the flag. It belongs on like these official documents and this, that, and the other. You know, like Utah's doing, like maybe it can coexist. I don't know. And I'd have to get Tara's thoughts on that, but like
the language of
it doesn't need to completely go away, you know?
The language of the bill as it stands in Utah is that we have a new state flag. That's the one that will fly on top of the flagpoles and just be the official state flag. But we acknowledge our history, that this has been our flag for 100 years, and we still want to find out uses for it.
Yeah.
So that's what they're kind of coming up right now, is we're not balling it up and getting rid of it, but our flag, just as it stands right now, is just kind of underutilized. And this design, which we talked about Mississippi earlier, they had a really successful redesign program process, and Utah had more than double the input that Mississippi did.
Yeah.
Way more designs and way more public input. And so we've had an even more successful campaign of just kind of pitching the idea to people like, this is possible. What would you like to see? And so admittedly, the newly proposed flag, it was designed by committee. A lot of people had a say in this, but we've kind of come to something that people are like, those are our mountains. That's our southern Utah landscape. And that's our historic beehive. That's our namesake. So a lot of people are placated and kind of excited, like, okay, we can kind of honor the past while still adding something else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember, I'll probably put it up here in the video. And I was going to try and send it to you, but this picture, I think it was Dan McKay that tweeted this. I'm sure he wasn't the only one, but the like two Utahns like standing side by side. It's the same guy, badly photoshopped. I can't decide which one he's badly photoshopped into. I think it's the suit. It's I think it's a little bit of both. It's a hodgepodge, a Frankenstein's monster, basically. But but it's got like a Utahn and kind of like, you know, dressed down like, you know, smart casuals, button up shirt, but undershirt, jeans, all that, standing next to the new one, and then a guy in like a suit, tie, white shirt, all that, standing next to the old one. And it's the same guy, the same photoshopped guy in both. And I thought that was both a really funny image, but also like, you know, kind of instructive as far as what they are planning on doing with it.
Correct. And I abide by the teachings of Ted Kay, who said that seals represent governments, flags represent people. And I know that there will still be ways to use and honor kind of our current flag setup in kind of an official ceremonial aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love his imagery and just kind of like show this is going to be a everyday kind of thing. This is not like special, just government. This is accessible to everybody. We want all the public to kind of see Utah in this flag.
Yeah, it was definitely striking when I saw that. I was like, oh, what am I looking at here? Okay.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah. And Sarah had one more question, which was, what answers have you found for arguments you never imagined you'd need to have?
We've kind of learned that we need to get out on the forefront and kind of control our own narrative, because a lot of the naysayers are like, this flag, they're doing this because of X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
When actually it's because of A, B, and C. We know that, but they're kind of spreading kind of some misinformation that it's special interest groups. I love that they're like, oh, this shadowy organization behind this. And it's just me. I'm just at home playing Pokemon, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm the shadow organization.
Right. Yeah.
You need to worry about.
So mostly, okay, yeah. So it's a lot of like clear messaging, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming from a place of, we have state pride. We want to show off this state pride, and adding a new flag and something that will be more used and more utilized in both just flags flying in the neighborhood. But I now have a hat that has just that hexagon with the beehive and the star in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And I argue it's the cleanest, nicest piece of Utah flag merchandise ever made.
Oh, I would guarantee that it is. I know I love, like, I have stuff with the Tennessee TriStar on it. Like, I have a hat with that. I have a bumper sticker with that. I mean, shoot, they're like imprinting and painting our like overpasses with that at this point.
Yeah,
they all have the TriStar on it. It's such a good logo, like Michael and I talked about on a couple episodes ago, as far as like logos for city flags. This one's so good for the state.
Yeah, and I've argued, well, okay, I need to be better. I need to nicely debate. I said, it's not, we don't hate the seal. It's just that some other things look better on a flagpole or like printed on things. And then we've had people say, no, it's not about aesthetics. It's about wokeism or whatnot. And for those of you who know Dan McKay and his other legislation, you'll laugh when you hear that it's that he's being called woke. But
yeah, Tara just cringed.
Yeah, so it's just getting out and saying, here we've come up with a design for a new flag, and here's actually why. And not just, we've come up with a design for a new flag, and then having your detractors say, and you're doing it because you're wicked and corrupt and you hate America.
Yeah, I don't know of like a way around that, because it seems like and I hate to, parrot the same thing everybody says, but like in this society and where we are in 2023 and everything, it seems like even if you try and get out in front of it and you've got the best messaging in the world, you know what these things stand for to you know what they stand for to the indigenous communities, like you're all agreed on this. And then you put it out in the public, they are going to find a way to say that it's like satanic, to say that it's woke, to say that it's this, that, or the other. Like, and I don't know of like a way around that. I guess there may be ways to mitigate that, like get it as little as possible, but it seems like you're just gonna have to deal with that and just like roll with the punches, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, and this has been a long process. This really started like 2018 when kind of the idea started getting floated around and kind of explored, can we do this? But a lot of people, it wasn't until a final proposed design was selected that there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction. Like, wait, change?
That's exactly it.
Waste of money, destroying history.
Yeah.
And I'm no, we had a whole subcommittee about our history. We had a whole subcommittee about the design and taking into account public input.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head.
And I think one of the reasons why they didn't jam this through at the beginning of the Utah legislative session was it was kind of a time for education. Like, this is the design we picked. Here's what it stands for. Here's what the legislation says. We're not just going to throw away our history. And so as time is kind of our ally here, because knee-jerk reaction, a lot of people don't like change.
Well, and like the optics of pushing it through fast are not as great, are not as good, you know, like the optics of, I mean, to go back like 1 or 2 points that you made, like, yeah, it's so telling to me that these people, they never show up for any of the like planning meetings or any of the, not just show up, but like they never have any input for any step of the process until the process is done. And then it's a lot to say like, I don't like that. That can screw off. Like it's got these elements, whatever. Oh, well, did you like, I don't know if you want a certain thing on the flag, like we've been talking about it for what you said since 2018. So 4 or 5 years now going on. You know, you could have spoken up at any point in the process and said this, or proposed your own design, been more of a part of this instead of just being, but certain people just want to be, and we're not going to get into politics or anything like that, but like certain people just want to be reactionary, I think.
And yeah, and to Tara's point, there's a different opposition for different reasons. I'm totally fine with, and I respect those who say, I don't like that tax money or time went to this. I think there's better causes. I understand that. I understand if you just really like the current flag. I respect your decision. But I kind of do take umbrage with people who all of a sudden say, like, where did this come from? Like, why weren't we given a voice? And I'm like, man, there was a whole 6-month period of public input.
And that's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
If you kind of Google the process, there was one day where they taped up all 5,000 plus flag input designs up on the walls.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
I think I saw it on Reddit or somewhere.
Yeah, I was there, and what I love, there were so many that showed mountains and kind of bee imagery. And so I'm kind of glad we ended up with something that was kind of a consensus. There was one I remember on the wall that was just the current flag. Like somebody said, this is the design I like. There was one of the 5,000.
I mean, there was, yeah.
And you know, what I also like about the legislation, it literally says, it's written out there like, if you like the current flag, please fly it. It's still an official thing.
Yeah, I read that.
But we're gonna add something new that will kind of jumpstart how many people utilize the flag, and something that's more distinct, because state seal on a blue background is unfortunately the most common state flag design.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's most of what I had on the Utah flag, and that gets through our listener questions as well. So if it's all the same with you, I would like to have a quiz now. Change things up a little bit.
And yeah, for those of you who don't want to see me embarrassed, thank you for joining us. And feel free to click off now before you watch me embarrass myself.
I honestly would not worry too much about this one. But, okay. All right. So I do have a new song for this, which I believe you will be able to hear now. Sorry, now.
We've got questions and answers, and if you know the answers, go ahead and say the answers, and I will be content. I will be content.
Quiz time. There we go.
Man, move over dashboard confessional.
So that was the new, quote unquote, new song that I recorded for our quiz. And I hope you guys all liked that. I was going to mention, I need help with this. So if any listeners want to come up with some songs for our quizzes, if any of you guys are musically inclined, hit me up, come up with it. I will throw it in the show at that point on our future episodes, because this segment will be ongoing. Anyway, it's time to get down to the actual quiz, since that just said quiz time. So I think I've got something for that too. If I can go ahead and loop this. Can you hear that?
Yes.
All right, good. Okay. So it's for the listeners and for you. I don't know if you got around to last week's episode or not, but I was a little bit too easy on Joey last week, and I let him get away with just having fun with it. And I wanted you and the listeners to know that this is not supposed to be fun. This is serious.
Put on my serious face.
So, true or false? There is a whale on the flag of Wales.
Oh. I'm going to say false.
That is false.
Oh,
All right, question 2. Sorry, I laughed. I cut that out. Cut that out. What color is the dragon on the flag of Wales?
it is a beautiful red.
It is a beautiful red. Oh, also, I meant to do this. Good job. Question 3. What royal house claims the colors green and white that are on the background?
Ooh, I believe that is the Tudors.
Good job.
Nice.
Sorry, serious. The red dragon reps Wales. What does the white dragon, not featured on this flag, but in Anglo-Saxon / Celtic, history, if the red dragon is Wales, what does the white dragon represent?
Ooh, is it like the Viking invaders? Oh,
It was the Anglo-Saxons. I realized halfway through that I had said the answer in the question, but I was like, I don't think it was obvious. And
when you said it, I was like, I would have said Anglo-Saxons, and then I'm like, okay, I need to go deeper.
Shoot. Shoot. Well, whatever. I'm sorry. I threw you off on that one. You know what? You got it right.
I don't want your pity score.
Okay. All right. So, question 5. What is 13 times 13?
100 and I don't know, 70 something. I don't know. I don't know. That's my answer.
What was it? Don't know?
My answer is I don't know.
The answer is 169.
Nice.
Thank you. I didn't mean to laugh at that. I didn't even ask it for that reason. I just asked it because I also asked it on last show. And I think it may stay in the rotation. Okay, question 6. How do you pronounce the red dragon in Welsh? And it's spelled Y space DDRAIG space GOCH.
Udragoch.
The correct answer is that there is no correct way to pronounce Welsh. So you were screwed on that one. You were going to get it wrong any way you went.
Oh.
And no, honestly, I think that was probably pretty good. I am not a Welsh person myself, but I'll ask one after the show. I think I know a Welsh person.
Me and my wife did a tour of the UK. We went to England, Scotland, and Wales. And when we got to Wales, we were shocked at the language posted on all the signs. And I'm like, I don't know how that works, but I love that they have their own language and they're staying true to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think I'll ever understand.
No, they have one of the longest place names in the world, depending on how you define such things. But it's like Landfair, Powinal, go, gawk, or something. And it means like, the red hill beyond the trees that are also beyond the stream that are kind of near this thing or whatever.
It's a romantic nation to like kind of us medieval types.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, that is probably a good place to kind of wind down the show. We went through a lot today. We went through kind of the whole history of Utah. We got your under and overrateds. We did a little, hopefully it wasn't too fun, quiz on Wales flag. And now just need to know, where can people kind of find you, follow you, or find, things adjacent to you, like the Utah vexillology, like what you guys are up to.
Yeah, feel free to follow me on Twitter at Erik_Nystul on Twitter. I post my musings and random and dog photos there. Or follow us. We're brand new, so be patient with us while we get up and rolling. But flagutah.org. It's an exciting time to be a flag lover in the state of Utah, and we're excited to be on this ride. And there's a lot more fun things coming.
Right on. So yeah, go follow Erik and the Utah Vex Society over there. You know probably where to follow us if you've gotten this far into the episode, but flagged.rocks is my link tree. Another way to get there is just linktree/flagged for content, I believe, because that .rocks is about to expire, and I don't know if I'm going to renew it. Anyway, if you want to connect with us on social media, you probably know how, but it's at flagged4 content on pretty much everything except for YouTube, which is all spelled out at flagged for content, youtube.com/@flagged for content. And the YouTube has been getting pretty big. Go check us out there. Check us out on TikTok. I've got some dumb stuff going on over there that's kind of fun. Still figuring out how to use most of it. I had a lot of people messaging me after I mentioned the millennial pause last episode. People were like, "Oh, I'm just finding out about that from you." I'm like, yep. I found out about it from Gen Zers who are ruthless.
Oh, we're old.
Yeah. But in any case, that's where to follow us. And I feel like I misplaced my notes. I had a way to close this show out for once, and I totally lost it. Do you have anything that could help?
Yes, actually, in my opinion, the best way to end a flag-related program is with motivational flag-related devotionals. So over my shoulder is a painting of the Battle of Sullivan's Island, the defense of Fort Moultrie in South Carolina during the Revolutionary War. It's famous. It was the birth of the South Carolina flag as we know it. Originally, it was just a navy background with a white crescent. And this fort was very rudimentary. While the British ships had cannons galore, they had a fort made of palmetto logs. It was David versus Goliath, but the beauty of it was that fort of really moist, sandy, muddy palmetto logs just absorbed every cannonball that the British could throw at it. The flagpole was destroyed multiple times. The flag itself, holes pierced in it, but they just kept raising it over and over again until the British just gave up. They ran out of firepower, they sailed away, and the Patriots hoisted that flag proudly. What does that mean for you and I? There may be times where we fall. There will be times where there's a hole punched in us, where we are not feeling our best selves. We are not looking great. We are not feeling well. It's not how we look. It's that we get back up and keep going. Be like a flag. Keep waving, keep flapping. The most important thing is not how you appear. It's that you stand.
Right on, man. That was both the longest and probably the most insightful. Well, definitely the most insightful. That was great, man. Yeah, I'll remember that.
Yeah,
very nice.
And with some motivation, just
absolutely
keep going. That's the moral of the story always.
Yeah, Vex heads, let that get you through your Thursday today, and we will see you in just a week this time. Y'all take care. Flagged for Content is a Flags for Good podcast. Go to flagsforgood.com for more info.